do not exist in a vacuum. They exist within the rest of society and within the rest of the age groups. And so I think it's important, and in fact we are happy that in this workshop we not only have youth but all age groups represented. Next, I'll just go right to introducing the panelists that we have with us today. We are lucky to have 5 people who will discuss with us some of the issues affecting youth and internet governance. To my extreme right is Raquel Gato. She's a Brazilian lawyer currently working at the Brazilian Network Information Center, NIC.br, and she's also in the ISOC Brazil chapter. She's an assistant professor, yes, as young as she is, in states theory and political sciences at the law school in the PUCSP. She's also an author and a very good speaker. She's been involved in this process since YSIS. With us again is somebody who's seated at the remote moderators seat, but she's a part of us. She's Ginger. I'm calling her Ginger because she's my friend on Facebook, so we speak on a first name basis. But her name really is Virginia Park. Although she was born in the United States, she's lived in Venezuela for a long time. There she is. She's an educator and administrator by profession, and she's the Internet Governance Capacity Building Coordinator for Diplo Foundation. I'm sure most of you young people know about the Diplo Foundation courses. And then next to me is Tim Davis. Tim is the founder and co-director of Practical Participation, a UK-based consultancy specializing in civic engagement, youth participation, and collaborative technology. Other than that, I'd like to mention that a team is also a member of the Dynamic Coalition on Youth in this Internet Governance Forum. And then to my left is Kelly Coleman. She's a young journalist from Imagining the Internet, which is a project of Elon University. She participated in the youth panel in the IGF USA. She's very young and quite an excellent woman. She's a blogger too. And then next to Kelly is Peter. I cannot pronounce his second name. I think it's Majestic. But Peter is the president of the European Youth Forum. He has a lot of interest in European politics, world affairs, youth participation, new media, sustainable development, reading, traveling, jogging, tennis, table, electronic darts, and so on. So without much further ado, I'll just ask Raquel to take it up.
Thank you, Grace. And I must start just telling you some background from this to be chosen as the first speaker. I lost the lunch, which was organizing the workshop, so they decided I should be the one. So, no. So as Tim once said, I'm getting old, we are getting old to talk about youth, but the spirit kept the same. And as we approach the 30s, I thought that for those beautiful young and very shiny, they are shining on the sessions that have almost half my age, what I could bring on is some of the experience, how I got involved, how I started, and so this is what I would like to share with you today. First, touching the title of this workshop, I think that what youth can bring and needs to be involved in internet governance is to bring their voice. And for that, I address 5 points that I will go on as I tell the history. This is more history telling, personal history telling, to show you some of the points you can be involved and internet governance can change you. So when I started with this, it was on I had 19 years old, and I was an intern in law school, and I was working with intellectual property. And we had, by the time, a lot of problems with domain names and trademarks. So I start digging in, and I think this is the first point. You need to have the will, you need to be curious to understand, because I start studying and I start researching. After all, who rules the internet? Because we talk about domain names, we talk about trademarks, but who makes the rules? Who solve those problems? And then you got to internet and internet governance. And just after I graduated, I started my master's degree on international law, addressing those issues exactly. So, because when I started checking that there were multiple organisms, there is this principle, multi-stakeholderism. Oh my God, but in international law, we learn that the traditional and the representatives are the governments in international field. And how come we have several actors discussing, deciding, and for example, standards which are decided in IETF, they are made by the community and they are used worldwide. How is that happening? So I start researching about it. And we had the IGF, the second IGF in 2007 in Brazil. And this is actually my third point, my second point, sorry, which are local meetings. Because with the preparatory process for the IGF in Brazil, we had some meetings, and I got a small note in an academic newspaper that a preparatory meeting was going to happen. And I went there. And then I met several actors who explained what it was IGF and the WISES process. And I submitted my master's degree proposal to a meeting, academic meeting that happens one day before the IGF, which is GigaNet, and they accepted, so I went. And then I got involved here and never stopped. I've been in all IGFs, tried to be here every year. So this is the importance also to bring those issues, those debate to your local community, because this is the way you can also involve youth. It's difficult to bring you all here. I'm sure that from ChildNet, many more could come, and many more would like to come. And this is also a worry. In IGF Brazil, I also met the Diplo booth and got involved with Diplo. So this is my third point, because as I was trying to understand this whole and this big, huge word that is internet governance, I started digging on capacity building. And I started with Diplo Foundation, internet capacity building course. And this also opened up a lot of doors, not only broad knowledge, but a huge network. I think most of us were here. I can tell Grace, Tim, and Ginger, who is the coordinator. So I'm aware I have only 5 minutes, and I'm going to short this up. And from Diplo community, from the interaction with others, we start also being aware, or starting to debate the concern to bring how to bring more people. As I was saying, you can come. What could be done? And we started debating about remote participation. And there were now the remote participation working group, which started and pushed with the IGF Secretariat this remote we have today, the hubs model that can also bring to local communities, the content, the debate, and bring their voices in. So I'm not addressing exactly youth, but I'm sure that youth is represented. We have connected the Syracuse Students Hub, and I'm sure they are glad to be following and to be learning. And this is the fourth point. about e-participation, about inclusiveness and openness. And I should say, I can help myself, that we had earlier a meeting about e-participation with a lot of youth involvement, and I'm sure Tim can also talk more about the use we had on Etherpad, and we created a document online, and many people were making their inputs on time, just there, people that were in the room, people that were remotely participating. And this is a huge change. I think I've never seen in IGF this kind of collaborative and simultaneous creation of a document. So if you want, we have some copies, and we are going to also advertise that later. So, and the last point is, as I got more involved, as I got my work in NIC-BR, as the career started to merge more into internet governance, it's also important to also have the mentoring. I had this experience, for example, in ICANN. I'm talking about another fora, but it's under internet governance umbrella, because when you are a newcomer and you arrive on those meetings and you see so many people, some know each other, they are talking about issues that you can follow, you need someone to help you understand what they are talking about. We are talking about Tunis agenda. What is it? So this is important also to have this mentoring, this preparation to be ready, to be safe, not safe, but secure during your participation. So I think those were some of the issues I would like to bring on. We talked some of them on the Youth Dynamic Coalition. I'm sure you are mostly invited to come and to join. The ways we could build on IGF, specifically the Dynamic Coalition, to build tools, capacities, and everything else you might think it's necessary to get more involved, to get learning, and so on. So I think it was it. I hope it's useful to you, and I will be glad to take questions and help further.
Thank you. You're very inspiring. First, we'll listen to the other speakers. I'll invite Tim Davis, and then later we'll have a session where anybody can ask questions.
I didn't realize I was next. So I'll try and work from the notes I have here. So I think when we talk about youth, we've already been discussing here before the session started that youth is a label that covers a broad range of people. In some countries and contexts it means under 18s. Globally it's often a broader age range up to 30 or beyond. So I like to be clear in talking about children, young people and young adults when I'm discussing the youth factor in internet governance. Children broadly being, although these categories again vary from country to country, up to 13. Young people maybe are 13 to 19, and young adults those who are maybe coming here as university students, as young entrepreneurs, as employees of organisations, as members of civil society networks as well, and that can be people at all those categories. So I think we have to be really clear about children, young people, young adults when we discuss the youth factor, and we also have to recognise, to complexify that even further, that youth have many different identities. I'm a young person, or a young adult, I should say. I'm a young adult who runs a business, who's involved in civil society networks, who has particular identities, particular national identities, particular political views and ideologies. And there's as much diversity within youth as there is between youth and other actors. So again, we have to really be critical about what is the youth factor. But when we focus on children, young people, young adults, I want to focus on particularly children and young people in internet governance. I started out my engagement as a 16-year-old in children's rights campaigning, and I think actually whilst we've got good at the IGF at hearing from young people and young adults, we still are not listening to children's voices enough. And I think for both young people and children there are a number of key challenges. There is structural disadvantage in the way these processes are set up. There's less time to become equipped and to know how to speak up in these meetings. Ginger was sharing earlier that coming to IG for the first time, it was maybe 2 or 3 years before she felt confident to speak up in panels, and I think that would be true of many people. So for young people who are moving through those age categories rapidly, whose lives are going through many transitions of school to university to jobs to voluntary work to other work, having the chance and the time to consistently engage with these issues is a structural disadvantage that we need to address with structural solutions. We also need to recognise there are fewer resources to financially support young people to take part. People maybe giving up their work income to come and attend here, not being funded by their workplaces. So we have to look at some of those structural issues. But I also think more challenging is the institutionalized and internalized discrimination that we still have towards children and young people, and we have to constantly challenge ourselves on that. Adam Fletcher, who writes a US blog, the Free Child Project, talks about adultism as a form of discrimination as serious as sexism and racism. And I certainly do hear comments throughout IGF that are adultist, that are betraying a discrimination towards young people as young people. So I think we have to really challenge ourselves on that. I believe children have a right to be listened to. I don't just believe that. It's enshrined in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, a right to be listened to in every decision that affects them. And that creates for me an obligation to listen, and to listen deeply, suspending my own interpretations of what I think they're saying and listening to what is being said and actually taking that forward. So I believe children and young people of all ages can express their views on issues that affect them, and the internet, as we've heard, is an issue that affects from naught upwards in many, many contexts. So I might not expect a 6-year-old to be able to tell me the exact policy details and institutions I should go to solve a problem, and I don't expect most 60-year-olds to do that either. But I do know that a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old can tell me what they enjoy online and what they don't enjoy online, and I know also that I should be open to hearing ideas from them that cut through the organisational nonsense, the political blockages, the individual ambition that mean many people are not going to the best ideas in these solutions, and we should be open to hearing ideas from children and young people that actually give us real insight into how to solve IG problems. So is the youth factor counting in internet governance? Well, I think we've still got a long journey in society generally to making sure we end discrimination against children and young people, challenging structural and attitudinal barriers. But yes, the youth factor counts. Youth is a foundational part of discussions of social issues here in internet governance. So we've not only got a big challenge, it's a vital challenge for us to engage with, to build on. And I think amazing progress has been made over the last 5 or 6 years since the WSIS process onwards. But we are contending constantly with those structural challenges that mean we're growing older and other people getting involved have to fight every year for the resources to participate and have many other things going on in their lives. So we've really got to keep working hard on it.
Thanks, Tim. I'm glad you've answered the question whether the youth factor is counting. I hope that later you'll tell us ways in which we could make the youth factor count more. But right now, let me just invite Kelly to make a presentation.
Hello, everyone. So I have notes, so it's going to sound very wordy rather than kind of free and open, but that's just how I have to operate. One thing I'll say, though, is that it's been really amazing to be here and see just how much youth from East Africa are invested in the future of the internet, particularly when related to access. It's inspiring, and I feel is such a clear representation of how important it is to young people. It means connection to the world. It means opportunity to learn and grow. And it means opportunity for creativity, expression, and innovation. We understand this, we as in youth, and one thing I will say is this is definitely coming from my own perspective as a young person from the United States. But we understand this, and we understand technology. We understand how it works. We adopt the newest technologies and as they come and interact with them. But I understand that we need to worry about those who take advantage of the internet, which is to be expected. We need to consider ways to regulate, maybe, and legislate, maybe. But here at IGF, youth and protecting them, thinking about the way we use the internet has been discussed a lot. But youth themselves don't know what's being discussed about them here. In fact, I would say that many of us as young people know little about most of the issues being discussed here today and this week. Why is that? I'm currently enrolled in a course called The Future of the Internet, where I'm learning about privacy, policies related to the internet, issues that are hugely important to me as a user of the internet. And I'll tell you, it's a bit frustrating to me that I'm just now learning this. You know, as a young person, I feel that I've been kind of left out in some ways. I've been excluded from sort of knowing about these important issues, particularly related to policy. I mean, I didn't even know that these things were in existence, if that makes sense. So personally, I believe that before we begin creating more legislation, let's take a moment to educate our young people and then include young people, the technology users, in the policy process. And you know, I've talked a lot about educating young people at this in the panels that I've sat on so far this week. And so those who have been present have heard me say this a lot, and I'll continue to do so. Because I often feel that we as young people are pegged as lazy, uninterested, but isn't it true? I don't know, maybe that's just my opinion. But I also believe that we just don't know. That's how I feel. I feel that there are so many things discussed at this conference that I didn't even know about before I started taking this course. And now that I know, oh my gosh, am I interested? Oh my gosh, do I want to be invested? There are many things I've been learning in my course. I'm just saying, I already said this, but I'm going to say it again because it goes with my script. There are many things I've been learning in my course that I really care about, but if I hadn't randomly selected to participate in this class, there is no way I could care about because I didn't know. And you know, those who have heard me, as a young person, I feel that my peers in a lot of ways are being deprived from knowing about the policies that are being discussed that can impact them in incredible ways as internet users. But I think we as young people who utilize the newest technologies as they come, that stuff we do know about, should then be included in discussion with policymakers, educating them on how those laws will impact creativity and innovation, impact what is to come from a perspective of a young user utilizing that technology all the time. Also, I feel that if more people were educated, perhaps more would be present at these types of functions, participating more openly. So for me, it's not necessarily about legislating or regulating. It needs, I think the big thing for me is education, a two-way street, educating young technology users on issues related to the future of the internet, issues that we're talking about this week, but also involving young people to share with policymakers about their sort of opinions on the way that they will be impacted. So I was asked to kind of come here today and contribute, you know, my opinion about the policies that I believe should be in place so as to not stifle innovation and creativity for youth in the years to come. But to me, the education is one of the first big steps in that. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. I think so far in the panel, the point that is being reiterated is about capacity building and mentorship, that as we move to the future of internet governance, there's need to fill in the gap because there are people who, so to speak, are retiring from their post, and there are other people who are willing to take up that post, but some proactive approaches need to be taken so that we can have a better future. Next, I'll invite Peter, who's the president of the European Youth Forum.
Thank you very much, Grace. And I feel uncomfortable when you continue pointing out my function, because in the IGF, the beauty of the IGF is that there's a multi-stakeholder process. It doesn't matter who you are, who you represent, but what you say about things. So yeah, I'm going to try to bring in a bit of a different perspective into this, the perspective from a youth organization that tries to focus on how we could actually ensure continuity and sustainability of something that we're doing. We as an advocacy platform and a capacity building platform for organizations in Europe do that constantly on several areas, but new media as a topic is relatively new for us. And there, it's many ways, like Kelly was mentioning, you don't simply know about it yet, you are not informed sufficiently about it yet, and that's what's happening to our members a bit. our member organizations are still stuck in the basic fundamental question of internet governance. Is it more than just a communication tool, new media? So that's what we're trying to do within our forum at the moment, because we have been taking part in IGFs, we have been taking part in Eurodic, we have been sending individuals to these meetings, we have been sending youth representatives to these meetings. They have come and gone, they have given feedback, but there was a lack of sustainability of that. So we're trying to approach that exact question. As I think it's something that is also crucial for the IGF as a whole in the next 5 years. So first, if I look at the question, did IGF have any impact on youth? I would say absolutely. I mean, in many ways. Just as I mentioned, the nature of the multi-stakeholder approach that offers a possibility both for individual young people to speak up and be present, and we have seen this all over this IGF, at least from my perspective, the great kids that, and I say kids because they are in comparison to me, kids who are simply brilliant in putting forward their own ideas, their own perceptions. But what is also important to bring in youth organizations to take part in this and have their voice heard. I think it's crucial to raise the voice of youth as a whole in the IGF, but also to ensure the sustainability of youth representation, to start asking questions about youth representation. And of course, I think there is a role to play with the Dynamic Youth Coalition that we have and a space where we can tackle that question. But I think it's important that we start raising it, because I can speak as Peter, who is interested in new media, but that's just one voice. If I speak as Peter, as representing a European Youth Forum, I have the right and duty to speak on behalf of tens of millions of young people in Europe. They might even not know that I can speak on their behalf. Technically, I'm speaking on behalf of these young British citizens here because British Youth Council is our member. But you know, it's the same problem of representativity that we have in representative democracy. Barack Obama might be speaking on behalf of all Americans, even though not everybody knows or agrees to that. So that's something I want to bring forward as a very important thing to consider. Then the biggest impact I think the IGF and Eurodic had for us as an organization and our representatives was simply raising awareness about the topics that are out there. By participating, we suddenly noticed there are so many things that we feel provoked by, that we feel touched by, that we are the users of the internet and we do have a say and we want to get involved. So it was a bit of a, usually we are always crying out, we want to say something and we have things to say. This time it was more about, we were put in a process and then we saw that actually, wow, this touches us directly and we need to have a say on this. And then we're trying to find a way how to raise our voice and what that voice should be. And one such area is e-participation. We have been advocating a lot in Europe to make sure that internet governance focuses on providing the possibilities for e-participation to young people, as this has been proven to be an innovative approach to participation in decision-making as such. But e-participation can only be effective if it's accompanied by offline participation. And there we want to pair it with the work of youth organizations done on the ground. Because if we want to educate, if we want to inform, if we want to raise awareness, this needs to be a constant process. And we have channels, peer-to-peer channels, that are in youth organizations. Of course, there are others, and every individual here can go online and raise awareness about these things to his or her colleagues and friends. But youth organizations have already those channels existing, and they can use them. Then what have we learned so far? I think that we have learned that the biggest problem is to ensure a meaningful participation of young people and youth representatives in the IGF and similar forums. Not to showcase young people, but to really make sure that what they are saying is coming either from their personal experience that is valid in itself, or it's coming from a process that has been debated and are then speaking on behalf of their colleagues, be it from a school or be it in a youth organization. But of course, this is also linked to certain barriers. Already Tim mentioned financial structural barriers in bringing people in, bringing them here physically. But I think it's also important that we have a lack of information and knowledge, which is linked to digital literacy or lack of it, in terms of being able to participate remotely. I think it's a great tool that we have, remote participation. But we don't necessarily know it, or we don't know how to use it, or when to access it. Or I have to admit that when last year when I was first hearing about IGF and I was encouraged to do and be part of a hub and all these things, like, what? I don't know, I don't understand what you're saying. How does that work? I was feeling that, no, I'm just going to leave it, you know? because I have so many other things at the same time. So we have to address that, how we can overcome those things. Then I think something that was mentioned in the previous panel over again is that we shouldn't treat internet issues as youth issues, focusing constantly, let's protect the children and youth. But we have to treat these issues as issues on which children and young adults can have a say and should have a say on. So to bring in their perspective of these topics. And then lastly, what I think should be improved in the near future, or could be improved, is one also been mentioned already a lot, capacity and competence building of young people and youth representatives, especially with the mentioned preparatory meetings. This is something we have done in Europe thanks to our member organization, who took upon themselves to find the funding and then to create the space, even sometime elbowed their way through with the Eurodig, and Ginger remembers that. But you know, in order to really create spaces to raise your voice. And then to better support the participation of youth in the different IGF formations and encourage and support long-term involvement of youth as a stakeholder. And I think we should look into how we can further develop the dynamic coalition on youth, something we have discussed this morning, in terms of one option that came out. Do we want to focus, as everyone who is involved in that dynamic coalition on youth, on one particular topic that we want to say this is important for us for next year's IGF? We will of course have a say on other things, but is it one topic that we really want to push and create like a network of young people and youth representatives around the world who should focus on that? Or simply by better coordinating ourselves and working throughout the year? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also get that there is an IGF culture that has a language, that has ways of doing things, and the youth can also be part of this culture. They can learn this language and they can also engage, because this is our future. The internet is our future, and we have the biggest stake in the future. Next, I'll invite Ginger, who has been in this process for quite a long time and who's observed a lot, and I'm sure she has a lot to advise us on.
I don't know if I have a lot to advise you on, but I can talk. I would like to mention, I think, has everyone here heard the term digital divide? The way tech can divide civilizations and groups of people as well as bring them together. I would think that one thing that's really cool about the internet is that it has helped us to minimize the age divide. Because I have to admit, I identified with Raquel, with every single speaker when they came on, because as I came, yes, I've been in IG, but when I started in IG, the reason I got started in IG is that I was a member of the United Nations Association of Venezuela as a human rights defender. They needed a translator. I speak English as well as Spanish. I work in Venezuela. So I started getting these documents on WSIS, on the World Summit for the Information Society, and translating them because Venezuela was a member of the task force on WSIS. So my only qualification to get involved in internet governance was that I spoke English. So if Kelly says she was like, I don't even know what it is, and I didn't have a clue. That is how I got involved with Diplo Foundation. It was because I was on a task force in the World Summit for the Information Society, and I didn't have a clue what it was. I happened to see a call for applications for Diplo Foundation, and believe me, I wasn't in the age group. I was born in the US. I didn't have any of the qualifications, but I told them, you guys have to help me. And Diplo Foundation did let me in, and I did take the course, and I have a little bit more idea what I'm talking about. But it's not that much different from any one of you who step in. I didn't have a clue when I started. And as Tim said, it took me years before I would really stand up and talk. But I did find that the people who had been around a little longer, if you stop them in the corridor and ask them, they will help you. Now, when I say that the internet's a great equalizer for age, okay, so it does have a weakness. It does mean that older people can stalk in chat rooms and things, but it also means that older people can get online and be involved. It means that you can get online without any prejudice, because we don't know. When you make a statement or send an input to the IGF Secretariat, nobody knows how old you are. Now, I could say, as a matter of fact, if you're wondering what I'm doing on this panel, I do think that I am younger than anyone in this room. Why? Because I have been young for longer than any of you. So, yes, I may be 4 times as old as you, but I am younger. I do think we have to realize that young issues affect all of us. You, in particular, are facing them. I can definitely understand the financing issue if youth aren't taken seriously and don't get involved. How can you learn? But remote participation is an option that many of us, I live in Venezuela. Getting here was not easy and was not cheap. It gives us the option and the realization that the IGF does not take place 4 days a year. The IGF takes place 365 days a year. And very, very many of us tend to think, oh yeah, the IGF is coming up. Yeah, it's coming up. If you did not, in January, write your input to the Secretariat, and then you complain that you didn't have a voice in setting the agenda, give me a break. They ask constantly for input. That input is only done by e-participation. It is only done by email. It is then collected in an open consultation in Geneva, unfortunately, but Geneva also has e-participation. And if you, and I know this because I have done it myself, I was not happy with the collaboration and the consensus document. As you know, by the time we get consensus, things get watered down. I wasn't happy with the statement the Internet Governance Caucus came up with. And by the way, the Internet Governance Caucus has no age limits. You guys are cordially invited. The Internet Governance Caucus is an online mailing list where we discuss civil society internet government issues. It's free and open. You don't have to know anybody to get in. Just sign up and you're on, and send in ask your questions, make your statements, make your points. I think many of you are already on it. And share the link. I was not happy with the consensus statement, so I sat down and wrote my own statement in much stronger terms. And if you read the input, the executive summary, my statements are in there. And I'm, an individual. You can do as much as you want to do, as much as you put into it, if you are willing to sit down and do the work. So through the Internet Governance Caucus, through the email, through answering all the requests for comments, you do have a voice, and we, as I say, we can't wait for everyone to put remote participation there for us if we don't get out there and participate. So I don't know if any of that made any sense, but just some random thoughts that might bring us forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ginger. Thank you also for the challenge. I hope for the next 365 days, we'll have a lot more people from this room participating. As a representative of the people in this workshop, we were hoping to hear something from the group from... Oh, okay, go right ahead.
Lovely. I wanted to speak a little bit about some of the practical challenges of bringing young people to the IGF, if that's all right. I'm Lucinda, and I'm heading up the Youth IGF project, and we've brought out 8 young people who you've all seen, and I just wanted to talk about some of the background to it, because we hear a lot, yeah, it's really great for young people to be involved, but the reality of the situation for us is that young people in the UK are in schools most of the time of the year, this is our day job. We talk about internet governance and internet issues all the time, so we're very familiar with the language. We've talked a lot about how young people are using the technologies and are very familiar with it. But I still think, from my experience with them, actually...
Sorry, excuse me?
Yes.
For the sake of captioning, please speak a little slower.
bit
And this
slower.
goes to everybody.
Sorry. But from our experience, the language isn't the language that the young people are using. They're very familiar and comfortable with the technologies, but it's still a very technical and prescriptive language, and there's a lot of jargon. So we've invested a huge amount of time in our 8 young people. We hold a youth camp to talk about internet governance and to familiarise them with the issues that they're going to be involved in. We had, I think, 3-day discussions in the summer. There are also practical considerations for bringing young people to the IGF that I just want to mention. In addition to the time to prepare them, there are also child protection issues if you're taking young people away from home and away from their parents. There are also, you need to bring chaperones, you need to do risk assessments. So for our 8 young people who are here, they're part of a wider party of 17 who have come to facilitate that. So for us as a charity, that's a huge challenge financially, and we're based in the UK and we've got funding, but I'm sure for other countries there are great difficulties there. So there's been this significant input in terms of time and travel, and we've been in 3 workshops, which is fantastic, but that's just 3 workshops out of a plethora of many. And it's very difficult for the young people to continually be in contact during the year because they've got their schoolwork and things. So we facilitate that as much as we can. They're all fantastic learners, these young people, and in spite of what they've picked up, I still think they miss out sometimes on the wider context because they're not involved in the debates on a daily basis. And that's not a criticism of them, I just think that's the reality of the situation. I mean, a lot of us have followed it since WSIS. For some of these guys, it was new this June to talk about. So, yeah, it's been absolutely great to have them here, but I think there are some real challenges. I also think there is some opposition at the IGF. This may be a bit controversial, but I think there are some who don't want the status quo challenged and who don't want to hear from young people. But I very much take Ginger's point, actually, that we have a responsibility to chip into all the early consultations. And we're going to do that more this year to try and get young people in the main sessions, because that's where I've really perceived that they've been lacking. I still think there's a huge way to go. I would like to see young people from every country in every session. I'd like to see them integrated as panelists. I'd like to see them chairing sessions. And that's something that we're going to be working towards. But it's been really great to hear from all the other panelists. And we're going to facilitate some new partnerships, I think, for next year. That's what we're going to work towards for Azerbaijan. And we'd really welcome talking to anyone who wants to work with us to help make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wanted to make a statement before we go to the question and answer? Okay, we'll start with the lady.
Okay, the name is Titi, and I must confess, even though I don't know, officially according to the United Nations, the African Union particularly, I'm still classified as young. But I was hesitant to show up at this session, and I'll tell you why. How many people are aware that there was a WSIS at Youth, or a WSIS Youth Caucus? Anybody on that side? Okay, so when I walked in, I eventually won the battle with myself, and I ended up in the room. Because again, I'm passionate about anything young. And when I walked into the room, I said to myself, I failed. And I'll tell you why. There were 2 phases of the WSIS Youth Caucus, of the WSIS. And in each phase, it took us a long time. Eventually, I think it was PrepCom 2 in 2001, when the WSIS Youth Caucus was recognized, when we went beyond the phase that we are currently in. And we moved to the level where we were recognized, and we got our sentence into the declaration. Finally, that was a great achievement. Why I said that I personally think have failed is, if it comes to the Internet Governance Forum, and the same challenges are being faced, then it means that somewhere along the line, as the person who was the last Global Youth Caucus facilitator, enough was not done to pass on the baton. Not that it wasn't attempted, and the issue around there being, you're very correct, there's a huge, huge resistance about having youth issues in the IGF right now. It wasn't that there wasn't an attempt to continue the process, but the challenges that you mentioned now, from finance to having people not necessarily being interested in having young people on panels, or not thinking we had anything great to say because we wouldn't say the jargon, or we would say it in a confrontational way, or would say it with too much passion, and we will cross the boundaries. But it came to the point where it became more of a, I would say, distractive issue rather than contributing to the process. And this is what I have found useful. I took a step back, and so did a couple of the other people who were with the WSIS Youth Caucus, and we reorientated ourselves. Where we did not want to be pigeonholed by our age. I do not like it when you pigeonhole me by my age. In the present century, my age does not define my level of knowledge. It does not define how much intellect I have or the level of understanding that I have of the issues. Absolutely not. So in as much, you understand why I had a bit of a fight with myself. In as much as it is great to be able to have a coalition on youth, I think it's very important. You need to be able to retreat, to be able to come forward, to engage. I think it's even more important to take the discussion forward where we can integrate, we can actually engage with the processes on the issue of spectrum that's going on in the workshop next to us, being able to engage on critical internet resources in a language that will astound them. And that, whether we like it or not, takes a bit more training. So, to encourage those coming behind, I think I failed, but I don't think we failed, but you know, we need to connect the dots. And I'm willing and available to help you in any way to be able to leverage some of those relationships, taking it forward in terms of future internet governance forums. One of the most important things I think we need to do at this point is, if you're going to engage in the Internet Governance Forum as young people, yes, you have studies. Yes, you probably have a minute day job somewhere. Yes, there will be financial challenges, but you have to have passion for it. You have to have passion for it. And that passion is what is going to drive you. 10 years on, I can tell you that this afternoon, I was still, oh, WSIS Youth Caucus, how are you? Psst. Even though I'm over 30. Do you understand? So at the end of the day, you will have other commitments, but this is the encouragement I want to hand out to as many of you that are feeling a bit overwhelmed and unappreciated because I've stood in your shoes, and I still stand in them. It's this: your passion will make a way for you. And in as much as they don't want to acknowledge the fact that youth is important, we'll keep the discussion and the debate open. So yes, a whole lot of encouragement. I saw the much younger ones. I think we get younger and younger by the year. And definitely, I think we're on the right track, but there's so much more we can do if you can engage more with the issues directly, concrete issues, and not necessarily keep yourself, if you look around the room, you know, it's
thank
not
you,
representative.
Titi.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'll ask anybody else making a contribution to please take consideration of the time, because there are a lot of people. So we'll have him, and then Ali, and then we'll come to you.
I appreciate for giving me audience. My name is Peter Adeleye from Nigeria. I just want to say that youth has to be given the practical role in this IGF, and I want to see more of African children and young people coming forward to IGF, either to WSIS also, to play a critical role, because we find out that most children and young people in Nigeria, they are interested, they are passionate about ICT, but their counterparts in other continents are far, far, far ahead of them. So in order to catch up with one another, in order to meet up the expectation of IGF and WSIS process, we need to bring all stakeholders, children and young people from Africa, from Europe, together so as to find a common solution to needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ali.
I'll make sure to keep it short. If you guys have any questions about anything I said, I encourage you to talk to me after or tomorrow. I think ways that we can engage more are making sure that the people here coming are multiple kinds of youth, both the consumer youth and the people creating the internet. And that'll also help them when they want to engage in these concrete issues, because they'll also understand them, and they'll also understand when someone's talking about something that they're really interested in, so they can butt in confidently. And hopefully when we educate youth to prepare them to come, they can focus on a particular issue and be experts in that, instead of knowing a little bit about everything. So they go to particular kinds of workshops and they can engage with quality input that'll give us credibility. And I think we've done a great job of getting youth here. I understand it's insanely difficult, but I think those are just my comments going forward.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicola Douglas. I'm with ChildNet too. I was just going to say that this is my first week at first ever time at an IGF, and just 1 or 2 times this week I've gotten the impression that young people being here is just a bit of a novelty to some people. That what we're saying is only interesting because we're young people. But it was a lot of what Titi was saying, is that I want to be listened to on these issues as a person, just in general, regardless of my age. And I know that I may bring a fresh perspective to things because of my age, but not all of what I'm saying is new. It's stuff that's being said already, and I just want to enforce it. Yeah.
Thank you. Just before we go to the next round of questions, let's hear from the remote participants.
Okay, to kickstart the Q&A, we have a question from students at the Syracuse University in New York. And their question is very pertinent to what has already been discussed. It's, how is the IGF raising awareness about the forum to the youth? Personally, I don't think the IGF is affecting the youth because there's very little knowledge that the event exists. Thank you.
Any comments from the panel? Okay, Ginger.
You'll have to excuse me for not speaking from a youth perspective. I would say that this problem exists in general. Not even my family can understand what I'm doing here in Kenya. So it's not a matter of the IGF projecting to youth what is IG, what is the IGF, and what is going on here. It's projecting it to the world and making the world interested in what IG is and how important internet governance is to each and every one of us. So I would say that everyone, young, or medium, or middle-aged, or old, we need to go out and tell our friends and our families so that they understand that it is not a matter of telling youth about the IGF, it's telling the world. Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on that because I think the criticism is correct, but misplaced in who it targets. It's not to target the IGF because it's just a forum. It doesn't exist as one person. It exists as the stakeholders that are present. And this is what I was talking about in the beginning, when you need to bring it back home. You need to make sure that you as a stakeholder in this go back and inform your colleagues, your organization, whoever you're representing. If it's you yourself, then you go back and you discuss it with your friends to raise awareness about it. So it's not the IGF as such, because as such, it doesn't exist. It's just a collective of us.
So I think I want to respond to that, disagreeing slightly in saying there are some very practical things I think the IGF can do to be better known. We believe in the power of online information, yet the IGF's web presence is very poor. It is under-resourced. It is hard to find out what's going on. It's hard to find the workshop reports from last year that can mean you turn up well-informed. It's not got good open data on what's happening when. I would really challenge anyone involved as donors to the IGF to invest in improving that online presence so that we can make the IGF more inclusive, and to do that in a way that takes on principles of user-centered design, that explains things clearly and accessibly and tests with users from across the world that do they understand what this means, so we speak publicly, not internally. So I think we need a big investment in that digital infrastructure, and I also think there's a role there to support the knowledge sharing over the years. I'd certainly, with the Youth Coalition, we've set up ycig.org and a mailing list, and I'd invite anyone who has been involved in youth processes in the past to please join that and throw in your thoughts, comments at any point. But it would be great if the IGF itself was really supporting that that more, because we've already had issues with who's paying the server bill. It goes down because the people are changing constantly, and those simple things make a big difference.
So can I just build on and say it appears impossible, but I agree with both, and I think there are ways to have both ideas put together. First, it should be, yes, something into IGF, but not only from IGF Secretariat. If you don't have the users, if you don't have the youth, if you don't have the human resource to build on that. And I'm also addressing one of the point, I'm sorry, I lost your name, but from the WISE's caucus, because bringing on, again, the experience from the remote participation, in IGF Brazil, there were a huge resistance. Remote participation was canceled on the day before the IGF started through the chat, because there were not enough procedures. And little by little, this small group, and I say small group, it was 5-6 people, Ginger, me, Marilia, Rafik, Sherit, I can name them in my fingers, who push up, who start building this hubs model, who start saying, no, this is important, this can go on. And year by year, we learn something. We go one step further. We have small steps. One time we have the chat, the future, the interaction. One other year we have the remote moderator. One other year we have the captioning. This is from last year in all sessions. So each year we go step by step. We don't have to go it all. And this is something we could build on, thinking about concrete steps. If you think about the Youth Coalition, it is into IGF. We just need to push that. We could have, for example, for the open consultations, you could work with this idea of local meetings, what you call hubs, so you don't get lost, Mr. President. Those are just local meetings. And to get on and online the open consultations and to get your voice there. I've been only in one open consultation, and because I was in holidays and next to the Geneva, but I've been all the time online participating, and even if the platform they offer doesn't work, I use Ginger or someone else who is there and talk through Skype. So creating this network is also important. And also, I'm thinking last year, I think it was mentioned during the closing remarks, but to maybe have a young representative on each panel. I don't remember exactly where it was addressed, but I thought it was a good idea. So, but for that, in each panel, in each main session, you could have a youth representative. But for that, you need to have a resource list, and this only can be done by us. So let's not just push to the other side, but let's bring to us what can we do. So which are our strength areas? As I said, I came up with this intellectual property background, and maybe I feel more comfortable on that. Oh, or those kids, they're not kids anymore. They are here, they're speaking out. And but what is they're interested in? Can they share, like in small groups, and divide, in small groups and create, oh, I like more this kind of child protection, I like more the mechanisms of internet governance and so on. So I was trying just to wrap up what Tim and Mr. President, I don't know your name, I forgot. And so they addressed and hope it's useful to bring some concrete ideas to this workshop.
Thank you. So the youth, we have to remember we are also a strength and we're a resource in ourselves, and there's something we can do. He has a burning question, and then we'll hear from her.
Thanks very much. I would just like to share my opinion on why youth is so important, and I would just say this in two quick, brief reasons.
Sorry, please introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, I'm Connor Dolby from ChildNet, sorry. But I'll just quickly do two brief reasons. Firstly, as youth, we are the future. And if we get an understanding of the internet and the kind of problems we have and the solutions we can get at an early stage, that when we grow up and we become go into government or whatever we do, we can take these ideas and push them forwards. For example, I was in a workshop for access and diversity, and they were talking about, instead of having features for helping disabled people fixed to them, build them into new software. So if we learn about that now, we could do that as we're designing them. And secondly, I would just like to say that as older generations, you can use us and use our fresh ideas to improve the internet that you use now, and you can use all our ideas and just bundle it into one and fix all the things, all our ideas into that one internet. Thanks.
Sabrina Cajoli from the Council of Europe. Just personal views that I felt like sharing. I attended a related workshop before, which was entitled Challenging Myth About Young People and the Internet. Maybe I'll make enemies here, but I feel like challenging myth about adults. I think that I've heard things about adults' reluctance to involve children and young people. I disagree with that. I mean, not all adults are like that. As Mrs. Ginger was saying in her own particular way, adults are also just younger. They are young people who have been young for a longer time and can keep the spirit. People can be also, like myself, former youth activists, so they know exactly what you're talking about. They were just in your place just a few years ago. But the challenge is that they don't necessarily know how to go around with that, because as one of the young participants said earlier, we're on the learning curve, and that's true for all of us. It's true for the IT technologies. It's also true for youth participation and how to make it meaningful. So I'd just like to convince you that there is not necessarily always reluctance to that, but maybe a need for guidance from you guys also. Also, I've heard that some people, or some young people, are waiting or expecting to be given a chance to. Size it. I mean, you want to have an active role, size it, that it starts like that. And as any citizen, I think that the internet is very revolutionary in that respect, that it broadens really for every citizen, no matter our age, the scope for participation in democracy and citizenship. How many of us have been directly consulted by our leaders on legislation? No one. Yet we have a room for direct participation on regulating the internet. That's a huge step in my view.
Just a brief response. Absolutely, I think we have to not generalise about adults as well as we not generalising about young people. I think a key issue here is the issue of power, and there are some people who see their role in these processes as to support good dialogue and better decision making, and there are other people who have some power and want to hold on to it and see new ideas, challenges to that as a threat. And I think we have to be really critical of calling out those people who are trying to hold on to power illegitimately and challenging it, and really working with those who maybe are there to listen to young people. Though I do think the structural disadvantage of youth means that it's not just saying to young people, seize it. We do have to create spaces as well, offer the opportunities, speak up on people's behalf, not saying wait for the chance to speak. Always when you can speak up, do. But as moderators, as facilitators, we have to be attentive to those who might be just the hands almost up, but it's not up, and call on those hands, call on those people quicker, and just be sensitive to the structural disadvantage young people often face.
My name is Anne Browse. I'm one of the chaperones. I'm Connor's teacher and have taught the other pupils here, 4 of them. I just want to say that the question that we're asking this afternoon is the same question that is being asked certainly in British schools and has been asked for the past 4 years. We have been reluctant to listen to the voice of students, partly because for a long time we have believed that adults know best. That is changing. We are now incorporating student voice very much into our interview processes, our decision making, our school governance, and it is making a tremendous difference. It has taken time, but I would just encourage you to stick with this process. And the important thing is that the young people and the older people, I think, are beginning to learn that no one is better. Everyone has a voice, everyone has a perspective and has something to say. And we're developing that culture of respect where we listen to each other. And the young people listen to the older people, we listen to the young people, but we take them seriously and involve them. So I would encourage you to keep going with this whole process.
Thank you. The point of sustainability and also the point of involving ourselves in the processes keeps coming back. So we have a few minutes left. We are going to take, also from there, but we're going to take sort of closing remarks. We'll start first of all with the floor and then anybody who has closing remarks. The interesting thing about this workshop is that nobody's asking questions. Everybody's giving contributions. So we'll start with Paul, who's the remote moderator, and then we'll come to you.
Okay, I'm just going to read some comments that I've been receiving. So, back to Syracuse University. They're saying that I don't believe that just going back to your colleagues is good enough to attract people to participate in the IGF. I think we should be proactive in actually bringing our peers with us to these remote hub sessions. And then he goes on, the comments go on to state that we think that sending out an email to intellectual institutions to spread the word might help to get more participants. So perhaps maybe some of you may want to react to this. And Milton Muller, he actually commended TT and says that she emphasized that it is issues, spectrum, internet resources, etc., that people need to understand and engage with, not so much the age group. So those are just some of the remote comments.
Okay, first the gentleman from Africa, then the other one.
I don't know how you guessed I was from Africa. My name is Davis Edaka, and I think as a closing comment from my side is why is youth in IG important? Then let's not look at internet as a separate issue from everything else in life. Why is youth in, like he said, politics important? Making movies important, making music important, making books important. If we can answer these questions, it's because the youth, maybe I'm semi-youth, we were born, or when we were growing up, the internet was part of the earth, like air or like water. So how it's governed, how it's going to be managed, how it's going to grow from now on to the future, it's the same way they're going to tell me how water is going to be governed, how air is going to be governed from now on to the future. And I would like to have a say, like the gentleman from UK said. We would like to have a say because whatever you teach us now about the environment, once we are in power, we are going to enforce that. And whatever we say about IG today, then as we grow and become and take over power more and more, we are going to enforce those things in a better way. Is openness, is security, is it privacy and all that. We probably understand it from a more closer perspective. So in closing remarks, what I would like this forum to take is that IG is not separate from any other issue affecting everybody on earth. We need to take it in that same way. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jamil Gohir and I'm from Pakistan. I won't make a closing remark, rather I would like to make an opening remark for the next one-year process for IG and youth. While we are talking about IG and youth, I think we need to look at the two sides of the coin. One side is basically the inclusion of the youth, and the other side is basically the understanding that we have to convey to that youth that IG is a process that they need to jump in. And while we look at the two sides, we need to actually look upon how we can make it more massive, more scalable, and more diversified, because I see youth from certain parts of different continents, but certain continents are totally missed. Nobody's from Asia Pacific over here. Nobody's from probably Latin America as a youth. Oh, all right. So, but definitely we need to look into the diversity of the youth that can be brought in, and that can only be done if we are able to think of inclusion as a whole. And then we also look towards the understanding of the youth towards IG process, because as my friend mentioned over here, that we don't understand, I mean, the youth don't understand the lingo that is going on over here, but probably if you can make it more easier for them to understand that, we could have more massive participation from the youth. So we need to look at both the sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Ginger would first like to address the point raised by Syracuse students, and then we'll come to you.
Thank you. I do appreciate the fact that the Syracuse students came back to their original question, and I would like to address it. I understand that the IGF needs to do more, that we each need to do more, but if you think about it, you'll realize that any conference or symposium that's held does advertising. If I'm going to give a symposium on dentistry, I'm going to send out the information to people who are interested in odontology. I am not going to send it out to every person in the world. So if I have an IGF forum, I'm going to send the information as widely as I possibly can, but I'm going to target the people who are interested in internet issues and internet governance. So if I'm interested in underwater basket weaving, I have to go out and look for information about underwater basket weaving, and I have to find out where it is. I would also say that Syracuse University is a mover and shaker in the world of internet governance, and that I suggest that the students take a little bit of responsibility there to find out what their university is offering, get very involved. They have Milton, for God's sake. Take advantage of the GigaNet. Syracuse is one of the most important places in the U.S. for internet governance. So I commend you on the concern and ask you to please help us spread the word. Go home, as they said, bring your friend in. One way of doing this is capacity building, and the Internet Governance Secretariat and everyone involved has made a very strong point that capacity building is important. I invite you to visit the Diplo booth downstairs so that I don't have to go into any information about that. But we do have a pen drive that's available with the text, illustrations, short videos. There's a lot of information available. Stop down at our booth, and then we can talk more so I don't monopolize here.
Thank you, Ginger. The lady.
I'm Becca Cawthorne, and I'm here with the the Youth IGF project with ChildNet. And this is more of an observation that I've noticed in quite a few of the workshops. Young people are putting forward ideas that other people don't seem to have noticed. And sometimes I think in some workshops there's too much jargon that gets in the way of being able to put points that would be relevant, but we don't realise that because we're not quite fully understanding what's happening. So I think if there's more education for younger people about the jargon that is being used, we can put more relevant points forward. Yeah.
Sorry, to address the point of jargon, which has come over and over again, I think also the youth, we are a resource. As young people, we are a resource. For example, in my country, an example is that all the advertisements are now run in Sheng. Sheng is the slang that the youth use. So if we got so involved in the processes, we could also change the language. We could change that jargon and make the IGF speak like us instead of complaining and insisting that it has to be the other way around. So it's also a challenge to us that however little we know, we need to speak out, however stupid we sound, and then in a few years' time, everybody will be speaking our language, hopefully.
I think one quick response to that is, what can we do after this IGF to collaborate on a glossary, on resources that help other people as you're on you're on an early morning flight back, so maybe not on the flight back, but when you get a chance, write up some of those things, put them online in an Etherpad document or a Google document, share them with other members of the coalition. Let's build that up, let's translate that, let's make that a really useful resource. And as Ginger just commented to me, we maybe also need to do that for our adult colleagues, to translate some of the things we might be saying to make them accessible for them too. But I think we can collaborate on those things.
Just real quickly, you teach me to understand the things you're saying in your text messages. I'll teach you the acronyms.
Hi, I'm Matthew Gem, and I'm also here with ChildNet. And this is just a follow-on point from what Becca has said. Peter, you said that what's so fantastic about the IGF is it's a multi-stakeholder event where everyone's contributing their ideas, and there's so many varied ideas. But what I feel, this is my first time at the IGF, is that the youth view is, as Becca said, usually the last one to be heard and usually the last one to be thought of. And I think people are kind of shying away, and as much as we're here and what Nicholas said, we are more a novelty. Yeah, we're having our views and we're saying what we want, but people are kind of listening to it but not quite accepting it because it's the most, not outrageous, but the most awkward view, and it's the one that's last considered. So that's just an observation I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there somebody who hasn't spoken? There's Victor, and who else? Okay, your burning question, and then we'll have Titi. Please make them short so that we can go to the closing remarks from the panel.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm here with ChildNet. Just leading on from what Connor said earlier, this is my first time at the IGF, and already I think it's just so beneficial for the voice of the youth to be presented at the IGF. Because as someone said, we are the ones with the fresh ideas, and I feel that we can assist with the development of the internet. And make it a safer, broader tool for generations to come so that they can appreciate the positive outlook that the internet can bring. And I just feel that it's such a great opportunity for youth to have the opportunity to come here and to speak to, the coalition, the adults that know what they're really talking about, and to get into depth with them on subjects in question.
My name is Victor Capio. What I'd like to say is that as youth, we have a responsibility to ourselves to share the information. 2 years ago, I did not know about the IGF or IG for that matter. But when I got to know about it, I realized that there are so many people who are also interested or would be interested if they knew that there's something called internet governance, because they use the internet on a daily basis. They have internet on their phones and everything, and nobody tells them that, hey, there's something that this internet is governed by some process. There's some negotiations, there's some meetings. So I think from today we need, I think taking from this conference is that we live here with a resolve or resolution to spread the word that actually the internet is a space which needs to be governed, and as youth, as users, we have a responsibility and a stake in the management of the internet, or rather its governance. So let us go out, especially my friend from Nigeria who said that Africans are not involved. Go out and share the information. Tell them that, hey, this internet is here, and we are the users, and we have a right, and we have a stake, and so let us take up the challenge. Let us not leave it to people who are older. And also, just adding up lastly is that we need to work together with those who are called the adults, so that there's proper transition, that we don't have people who once they leave the process are now not youth, now they're discussing other things. Let us work, let us talk to them, not talk at, so that it's a more inclusive process and there's actually proper transitioning. And let us also remain young, because as they say, we need to take care of sustainable development, and it involves the lives of the current generations and also the future generations. So if we keep on and spread the word, share the information, and talk to each other, I think the internet will be a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Titi?
Okay. I promise to keep it short this time. Okay, so quick wins. I firmly believe in leaving any kind of panel, particularly when they're like this, with quick wins. One of the things that has helped in the past is not waiting, but showing a can-do attitude. So obviously there is a problem with the website. It's something we can fix. Half of the time we fiddle around online anyway. So what can we do as young people to help the IGF website look better and make it more interesting, particularly for our generation? That's a quick win. Second thing is, if there was a party, you know how we announce parties on Facebook and you're expecting 50 people and you get 5,000? Okay, so let's spread the word. These are things that we can do immediately. It's not as easy. I, for one, know that the Secretariat currently is one person. One person. The IGF Secretariat is technically one person right now. So what can we do There's going to be the advisory group meetings and the open consultations next year. What can we push? How can we use social media to be able to take it forward? That's a second quick one. And then the third is, identify the aspect, the theme. There are 5 themes within the IGF. Identify the particular one you have an interest in, or a subset of it, and then get down to knowing everything there is to know about it. And like you said, I was also going to mention what had been said earlier, that one of the first things we had to do before the first WISs was we took all the jargon, everything we couldn't understand, we took it and we reinterpreted it, and then we published a little booklet where understanding the WISs process, and so you get it. This is how you lobby. This is how you do interventions, literally making it understandable for us. At the end of the day, we realized that more of the adults actually used it than we did. So those are some quick wins that we can get to, and they're not resource intensive. And please leverage Ginger. Diplo is really good.
Thank you. Paul, do you have something?
It's just a question that John Paul wanted to share, and I'll just read it quickly for you. He's saying that we have spoken about the impact of capacity building programs in IG on youth participation. During the first 5-year mandate, the IGF Secretariat and other organizations conducted various capacity building programs that targeted youth from developing countries. What did the program have on developing nations? I wonder if there's time to answer this.
Somebody will take it from the panel. Ali, really short.
There's a problem with bringing kids here because of money. If we could get other stakeholders to bring kids, I'm here from the private sector. The private sector has a ton of money. Why not get them to bring young entrepreneurs? Why not get the government to bring people, you know? And why not get Syracuse to bring people? All these places have a ton of money. That might help.
A challenge to Syracuse, among other people. Okay, now we'll have the parting shot from the panelists. I hope in their parting shot they can be able to address the main question of the workshop. Is the youth factor counting in internet governance, and is internet governance affecting the youth? We'll start with Kelly.
So I think my one comment, kind of from leaving here today, and after this spirited discussion, is I hope that we're all going to leave with concrete steps in mind. You know, I feel like we've talked about a lot of really big and broad sort of things. And so maybe it's an opportunity for us to think individually about steps that we can take to involve more youth, to change the culture if that's an issue, or to think about the things that we've talked about and take those steps individually to try to make changes in that way. Thanks.
Thank you. I hope somebody in the panel will also address the question from Jean-Paul, because, okay. Tim.
So simple answer, yes and yes, but there's a lot more to do. What is there more to do? Well, I think the follow-up matters. As Kelly said, last year on my flight back from the IGF, I started writing notes that became a submission I put into the open consultations. There was text that made it into the final statement. Some point in the last year, I put a Google document online and proposed a workshop and had others collaborating in that. Key to the YCIG list. So 3 follow-ups. 1, press release this to communicate as soon as you get back. Send a press release to someone to tell them that you've been here. I'm sure media in all sorts of areas will pick that up. Young people participating in IGF, we start building an awareness of it. Submit text to influence the process, whether that's a workshop draft or sent to the YCIG list, and share what you're doing to collaborate. The smallest idea shared through those mailing lists and other spaces really helps us build a community who can collaborate on making the youth factor count even more in future IGFs.
So certainly not. Why are you talking about youth here? No, just joking. I'm sure you all agree it counts, and it's still counting. And I was thinking to close with just a small also, a small note, a small history. Once I teach for the first year in law school, so they have between 17, 18 years old. And once one of the students asked, what changed when you grow up? Do you think different? And I was surprised by the question. After I got overcome that surprise, I could realize the thinking. Yes, we learn, we change some of the ideas, but the main thinking, the core, doesn't change. What you see today, by the time I had 17, 18 to now, is the same. What changes is sometimes, and certainly it's the maturing process, you see some ways to go forward, you change your way to act, maybe you're not so impulsive, maybe you can see more the big picture, but this is the core that you should keep alive in yourselves. Okay, just don't miss it. And just to address one of the issues about for example, the website and what can be done, just also to close with a concrete issue. I don't think we can change the IGF website, because we also need to learn that we are somehow under the UN umbrella. We are not the UN system per se, the core UN system, but we need to follow some procedures. That's why we have these badges and we have security and so on. So we also need to learn that not everything can be said on the name of UN and so on. But we can use the youth website. I think Tim worked on that. There is the blog. There is so many features, tools there that can be used, and it's for you. This is not, we are saying about the Youth Coalition, but this is yours coalition. So jump in. If you want to create another space, just do it. If we can help, just say, and you got money that were offered here, take it. So that's my closing remarks. I hope you enjoy this panel as much as I did.
Thank you, Raquel. Mr. President?
Apologies for going in and out, Mother Nature called. First of all, thank you very much for all these brilliant inputs, because it really opened my eyes in some aspects that I wasn't aware of that is a problem for you. But from my perspective, what it all comes down to is two credos that we believe in the European Youth Forum. First is that young people need to be involved in everything that directly affects them. Secondly, well, actually there are three. Secondly, I heard again and again, young people are the future. We agree, but we also disagree. We believe that young people are the present and therefore need to be listened to now. And as such, in order to be listened to, we believe in a simple for, with, and by young people. This is very important to us because, as I was saying in the beginning, this is all great that we come here as individuals, you empower young people coming from schools, coming from elsewhere, they give great input, but then they go. They might be a relay and they will link it back home and express their opinions and show share their experience, which is of course great. But the danger is that there's no continuity in that. The danger is that if you create one website or then another comes with a similar idea that maybe has been explored in the past, didn't work, you're missing opportunities. So therefore you need to synthesize these things, and therefore you need to create one sort of structure. It doesn't have to be very heavy, the structure, and I think the Youth Coalition can work for that purpose. But for example, in Europe, we have seen that our voices can only be heard if we are strong. We used to have 4 different platforms at European level that were claiming to be the voice of young people. We merged them 15 years ago into one. And now, actually to counter our colleague from Council of Europe, I am asked to and consulted on policy directly. We have something called structured dialogue at European level within the EU. We have something called co-management for young people within the Council of Europe, where we are directly asked to contribute. But again, this contribution needs to be channeled, needs to be, not in order not to take into account a different position, but in order to reflect a process that then a moderator within an IGF can see, we have a youth representative who speaks on behalf of youth because he or she speaks on behalf of those that have developed certain processes. And you can still have a young person stepping up and still having their personal views expressed. Great, but you still need to have that, otherwise you risk of not being listened to sufficiently and not being heard sufficiently. Therefore, we really need to work on ensuring how this can be done. it's a very long process. We have one example of this in Europe because our platform is unique in that sense at the global level. There are very few of such things at other places. In Africa, there's a Pan-African Union, but it's not really as inclusive. We have a basic motto that is to empower young people to participate actively in society, to improve their own lives by representing them and advocate for their needs and interests and those of their organizations. And if we can find a similar fora or structure to do the same in internet governance, then we are on the right path. But this is going to take time and effort. But I think we need to have an agreement that this is something that could be useful, and then see who is willing to take upon part of that responsibility. And we have actors who are here at the IGF now, who have been in the past, who have the capacity and the wish to do so. So we need to channel it. And hopefully next year we will have something in that direction. Thanks.
You would have thought I had paid Jean-Paul to ask that question, because Jean-Paul knows as well as anyone that capacity building has changed the world of internet governance. And to give it a short answer, I would ask you to please stop by the Diplo booth, pick up a book called Emerging Leaders. There you can see just some samples of things that young people who have taken capacity building programs have done and are doing. Jean-Paul himself is a tutor for Diplo Foundation. He is changing Africa. Grace is changing the face of internet governance. Raquel is changing the face of internet governance. The ISOC ambassadors and the next generation leaders who are going through capacity building programs are changing internet governance. So Jean-Paul's question doesn't even, it has an answer. There's a book on it. Go down and check it out. I would like to invite you, while you're down there, to get and I have the address, I will give it to you. Diplo Foundation also has a social network dedicated to IG issues, and I invite you to join us. We have two questions here. Has the youth affected IG? Youth has already affected the IGF. You are here. You are changing the IGF. Yes, you have. So on an institutional level, you have affected IG. You have affected at an organizational level because you have affected Diplo Foundation, where I work, and you will do so more as I take your comments into consideration during this next month, and I hope you will have more input with me. You have already had an effect on me on a personal level, as you've changed me. So on every single level, yes, youth is and has and will affect internet governance. What I have to say most importantly is, I hope you will have even more, because we need you and we know it. You can take one quick look at what my generation, well, our generations did with cable TV. You cannot just pick what program you want. You have to pick a package. There is no net neutrality on cable TV, and we didn't know about it. We didn't find out about it. We didn't learn about it. And we are stuck with no neutrality on cable TV. You guys can make sure that doesn't happen to the internet. So pick up the ball where we dropped it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. In conclusion, what has really come out of this workshop is that, first of all, youth are a resource. Like I said, there were very few questions asked in this workshop. It was more about contribution, because everybody has some knowledge to share with the rest, or some experience to share with the rest. We hope that this experience can be taken to other workshops, because as we've heard over and over again, the youth also have to be involved in the issues, yeah, and not just in discussing youth matters. You also have to get involved in the issues, and thankfully the IGF is divided into 5 issues, and you can take your pick, whatever interests you. We also have to be more participatory in the other processes that support the IGF. I am a member of the non-commercial users constituency of ICANN. I hardly participate because I'm still learning the ICANN jargon, but I have challenged myself, like I've been challenged by Becca from ChildNet. So we also have to participate in those processes. Raquel mentioned a few of these, the regional IGFs and other processes. And then since we know something about IGF, we already have a responsibility to mentor others. We cannot just talk about mentoring as if it's somebody else to do it well. Of course, Diplo, we have to ask you to keep on doing it, and ISOC and ChildNet and the other players, but we can also do something about that. We can also mentor others and teach others the little that we already know. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank you so much for coming to this workshop, and also inform you that through the Youth Coalition, which team is a member of, will present a report of this workshop to the last session of the IGF, the Taking Stock, and we would like to call upon you to come and support it. This will happen tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming.